at me and tell me what you see. I look at you and tell you what I feel. Look at me and tell me what you see. I look at you and tell you what I feel.
Welcome back to a new location, as I have moved house. But after a minor hiatus, things are back on track, as today I begrudgingly finish what I started with the fifth and, oh my god, thank fucking Christ, Final Destination film. And I should say, the fans of the series have made me very much aware that this film was far more well received than the previous one, due to its more serious tone. But I can tell you right now that the land of Jello and breadstick people does not interest me one whit. So my bar is set very low. The film begins getting the absolute most out of the 3D, as the cheapest looking credits are smashed by references to the previous movies. And if there's a better visual metaphor for this movie, I can't think of it. Oh, and this goes on for just under 4 minutes. Over and over, smash after smash, with nothing else. Since the filmmakers think you're stupid enough to be entertained by this shit. The shit show begins proper, with co-workers gathering to go on a company retreat, and we get to meet our resident meat sacks. First, Sam and his friend Peter. To tell them apart, Peter is the guy with furry caterpillars for eyebrows. More people arrive. Molly, Sam's soon-to-be ex-girlfriend. Also Candice, Peter's girlfriend. Olivia, whom the film signposts as requiring glasses, but she's not a fan of them. Contact lenses seemingly not invented yet. Also, Olivia and Candice dislike each other. But who fucking cares, since the film forgets about that. There's also the George Costanza of the group, Isaac, who is just as sleazy as he is pathetic. Dennis, the boss, the biggest corporate prick alive, but soon enough dead. And finally Nathan, who's having issues managing his work crew, and the only piece of setup here that will go somewhere. Actually, I tell a lie, cause there's also this.
They want to send me to the flagship restaurant in Paris.
Yeah, the main character might be going to Paris soon. That and the many, many clues that this film takes place in 2000 pretty much gives away the twist in the first 10 minutes. So fortunately for anyone watching, they can just leave and do something better. For me though, I have to continue. The co-workers begin their journey with clues full on in your face, like this sign. Subtle. And because this film likes to idolize the previous installments, a big logging truck passes by. Don't worry though, it's not the same one as in Final Destination 2. We're spared that physics-defying misery for a whole new set. The bus enters the killing field, a very clearly in disrepair bridge that's receiving structural work during rush hour. Oh, and the bridge is very, very high, since the film needs to emphasize the fact like it's not fucking obvious. Also, despite supposedly taking place in New York, the city skyline is actually, and kinda obviously, Vancouver. So destruction happens swiftly, and everyone quickly gets off the bus, leading to the first death of the film. Here's the film's chance to show that it's taking itself seriously, with a brutal but realistic and shocking death. Let's watch. Well, that makes my job fucking easier. First death of the film, and people seriously want to tell me that this is the dark and realistic return of Final Destination? Yeah, fuck off. Let's have another death that would have worked if the filmmakers grasped basic physics. Since Costanza was in the toilet of silence and didn't hear the rending metal and cracking of concrete, he drops in the water with the bus. However, with added poor physics, because while the bus is in free fall, so should he be. But no, he falls to the front of the windshield, just emphasizing how much of this was shot on a soundstage. So, who's next to die? Let's see. Oh right, Olivia, who has lost her glasses, and everyone stupidly persuades to essentially tightrope walk, and she inevitably falls. Not killed or knocked unconscious by the impact with the water, surprisingly. No, the filmmakers want to punch her in the face with a car instead. Oh, and this guy dies, and then big douchebag boss man gets a hot tar bath. I always find it hilarious that a single way to die, i.e. bridge collapsing, is not enough to kill off characters. They have to keep adding shit to make it more brutal or more bloody, for no real reason. This is basically 6 minutes of the movie just to say they all die. That's it. A single sentence is all you need to continue the plot. But no, it just keeps going on and on and on, and it's so very, very boring. But finally, we need the protagonist to die. So first, Peter continues the impalement trend of the films, and then Sam is taken out by corrugated steel. Oh, sorry. Oh my god, it was all a vision. No way, I'm so shocked and surprised at this point. I'm totally not completely bored by this series at all. The writers continue to impress. Final Destination 5 out of 5. So yeah, Sam sees the different clues and understands that what he saw is real and gets everyone from the bus to safety, just as the bridge collapses. And similar to the first film, investigators are quick to suspect Sam had some kind of hand in the disaster. So, obviously the investigator will be suspicious throughout the film as the deaths continue to occur. However, unlike the first installment, which had a plane explosion, this film's disaster is far less ambiguous, making the investigator seem even more obsessed and creepy than Mulder and Scully from the first installment. It just feels like the film trying to grab at its roots, but completely missing the mark and just adding to the nonsense. The investigator, and everyone else involved, feels a bit weird about how Sam was able to prophesize the disaster, so he's immediately cleared of all suspicion, with no one suspecting him ever again. Oh, apart from the investigator himself, who chases Sam around like a dog with a bone so he can be crowbarred later into the film. Oh, and it's not just the formats this film likes to repeat. Final Destination 5 continues the series' trend of being completely unable to keep track of simple numbers.
Among the survivors were 8 employees of Presage Paper on their way to a business retreat. The other 17 employees were killed in the collapse.
There was actually a similar fuck-up in the first film in which the number of deaths was misreported. However, there, it's slightly more excusable because it was a full plane and we never got the full layout. However, here, the film gives us a perfect view of everyone on board the bus, which, as you can see very clearly, there are exactly 19 people counting the driver on board. With our main 8 survivors, it leaves 11 dead. To magically invent 6 extra people shows that either the writers are incredibly incompetent or truly gave no shits when writing this film. Either is very likely, but it just shows that this series is brainless crap, given nothing but lazy contempt from the writers. So, I shall respond in kind. But this film must have something going for it. My guess is the budget, as Tony Todd returns as Bloodworth, who already knows about the cheating of death that occurred, being nice and creepy for no real reason, other than the filmmakers getting their money's worth, I guess. Moving on, Sam then visits Molly to fix his relationship, that we all give so much of a shit about. And while she gets tea, the lights flicker around Sam, which is in fact Chapter 1, Sentence 1 of the horror movie cliché handbook. Sam then sees a photo of him and Molly, however, that is actually a really shitty picture, because neither subject is in the centre or the focus of the frame, with huge amounts of wasted space. Why would you frame that? When they talk, Molly reveals she broke it off because she wants Sam to go for a new job in Paris. And once again, the big signpost of going to Paris is dropped, which for Final Destination is as subtle as this shit gets. Well, looks at least 15 minutes since we last had a death. The filmmakers don't want you getting bored now, do they? And will it be, true to form, complete biology-defying Jello and breadstick cartoons? You bet your ass it will. As Peter visits his girlfriend's gymnastic practice, which should have rigorous safety regulations and padded mats, I can't see how anyone would die here. But you see, I forgot about the health and safety pixie, who will kill all who ignore her rules. as we start with a big fan placed in the middle of the mats with a cable trailing everywhere, something which would never, ever be permitted. Ever. And of course, that cable has exposed wires because Health and Safety Pixie leaves nothing to chance. And just like the other films, because there's no improvement, for this death to occur, vast swathes of rules and regulations are completely ignored, so there's no realism here. And I would have given them some slack due to human error, but this is the equivalent of running with scissors. Hell, this is the equivalent of scratching the back of your throat with a gun barrel. These characters are suicidal lemmings with less of the personality. I fucking hate this series. But it's not just that initial crap that gets completely ignored. An exposed cable lying in a puddle of water. Completely ignored. Or a screw falling on a balance beam. Completely fucking ignored. What use is this fucking woman watching when she ignores this shit? Lemmings! Fucking lemmings! Anyway, onto the stupid death. As a gymnast steps on the completely ignored screw, she falls, knocking over the chalk bowl, which is blown by the fan, distracting Peter's girlfriend long enough for this. Wow, they really couldn't help themselves on that one. So please, allow me to get a bit morbid and explain exactly why that was insanely over the top and crap as a result. Let's catch her at the moment of impact. As you can see, although her head has been hit back at an odd angle, it's not what I would call insanely severe. And according to this, what causes her spine to explode from her back is her shoulders are forced back by the impact. Because apparently, she wouldn't just break her arms first. No. And then, despite nothing really happening to them, her knees then explode, giving us the resulting bloody goo. And it was this death that completely convinced me that these people are jello and breadsticks, because I've seen incredibly brutal gymnastic accidents, from broken bones to torn ligaments, the whole thing, but none of them ever came close to this bullshit. And the worst part is that the filmmakers could have made this death a simple neck break and it would have been just as effective. But because this series has no restraint, it treats its audience like fucking morons while eliminating any sense of atmosphere, horror, or realism just for some cheap blood effects. It's fucking pathetic. Continuing on to the next day, Sam and Molly are boxing up everyone's crap, and Costanza solidifies his dickhead status by stealing shit from his dead co-workers. But he does get pricked by a pin, which is supposed to be foreshadowing his death, but as his death isn't caused by what the film is implying, I don't think they understand how foreshadowing works. Costanza takes his colleague's coupon for a Chinese spa with the expiry date of 2001, meaning it's either insanely out of date or the film just had another tip of its hat to the later non-twist. And while Costanza goes to his ridiculous death, the others sit in the office and drink the grief away, more so for Peter. But since this film is trying to recreate the feeling of the first film with its dark and foreboding atmosphere, you know, how a horror movie should be, of course this entire sequence of events with Costanza is played for laughs. In a not dissimilar way, the fourth film did things. Costanza tries to negotiate for a massage with a happy ending, and then is the biggest, creepiest fuckhead possible, meaning I care even less than I already did about him, as he gets a shock when an older woman appears who basically beats the shit out of him in the guise of a massage. And back at the office, Olivia is late for an appointment and rushes off, knocking a picture of herself off the desk, with glass smashing distinctively over one of her eyes. Again, the event the film foreshadows here is not what kills her. So now I'm even more convinced the filmmakers have no idea how foreshadowing works. Also, yes, I noticed that the picture is from the roller coaster of the third film. Let's all marvel at the series' ability to reference itself over and over and over and over. Also, here's something new to the series, with Peter beginning his descent to becoming the franchise's first real antagonist. It doesn't matter if it's stupid, out of place, and kind of the antithesis of what the series is about. This is the first new thing the franchise has done since the second film, so why not give them some slack? Because it's stupid, out of place, and the antithesis of the entire concept, but never mind. After Peter throws his glass at the wall, their douchebag of a boss calls the investigator about it, as he's the only one still suspicious. The investigator is at the gym snooping around, with it remaining cordoned off, despite it being a whole day after the events, and even weirder, fresh blood on the mat. But a summary of events is required, apparently.
I could try it 100 times and never recreate exactly what happened here.
What? He wouldn't be able to recreate the circumstances of her death? She fell. There were many things that contributed to her getting distracted and falling, but at the end of the day, she fell. End of story. But of course, the script needs to keep the investigator in the story and suspicious, so they make it sound all ominous and strange when it really isn't. Also, I love how the film and the investigator make a big deal about the water dripping from the ceiling, when it's the only thing that had nothing to do with anything whatsoever. Resuming the out-of-place comedy, Costanza continues to get beaten up by the old woman, who then brings out the acupuncture needles, getting them placed all over his body in a very comic fashion, leaving him for a while. And now the death sequence can begin, fucking finally, as a fire starts in the room. And even though he's not restrained and the needles aren't restricting his movement, Costanza is unable to move properly, because nonsense should be par for the course, as Costanza falls off the bed. Now, this death is based on a real-life fatal accident, except in reality, the person fell and got a needle in the heart, which is realistic. But it's far too mundane and nowhere near as stupid as fuck and over the top for this film. So, obviously, that's not how Costanza dies, and even though he's covered in rubbing alcohol in a room of fire, that's not how he's gonna die either. Nope, he gets a big Buddha to the head instead. Now, I don't doubt that would have killed him and crushed his skull quite badly, but to completely flatten it, where there's nothing left but a lower jaw and neck stump, is beyond fucking ludicrous. And again, people tried to tell me that this film was down to earth, when the film almost deliberately has a mundane setup and then goes out of its way to splash fake blood around like a child in a kiddie pool. Back at the office, before the death news appears, Sam convinces Molly to go with him to Paris. Yay! These characters have exactly 40 minutes left to live, and we all know it, so I don't give a toss. Peter tells the others of Costanza's death, so they go to the death scene. What were they expecting to see exactly? And good old Tony Todd reappears to not only give bad advice, but very dangerous advice too. So I guess he, like me, just wants to speed this shit along. Sam questions Bloodworth, asking why he's following him, but he's just the coroner, and Bloodworth explains that he knew about their situation because he's seen it before, which suggests he's referring to the previous movies, but because this is a prequel, I guess this shit just keeps happening around him. However, here's a new one. Bloodworth tells them that because they're supposed to be dead, if they kill someone who is supposed to be alive, they get the time the murdered person was supposed to have. Because Bloodworth's advice has been absolutely perfect in the series. But also, he is actively encouraging murder here, and no one seems to give a shit. And thirdly, why didn't he give this advice to any of the other characters? Now, there are two possibilities to this. Number one, this is an idea the writers pulled right out of their arse and never thought of it before. Or, number two, which is my personal favourite because it makes the next half of the film completely pointless. Bloodworth never told the other characters this advice because after the events of this film, he realised it does jack shit. Kinda like his other advice, in fact. And now Peter has his evil scheme to follow, his antagonist status is confirmed, as he seems to fully embrace the idea of killing another to survive, which will come to a head later, after we have another secondary character death. And here it is now, as Olivia has decided to get rid of her glasses and have laser eye surgery. And if you're anticipating a death equal to Isaac Clarke's eye-based death, you're gonna be sorely disappointed. So yeah, she's set up into the machine and it's made to look as scary and as brutal as possible, making me wonder if the filmmakers have stock in a glasses repair company or something. But anyway, shit goes mental and the laser gets turned up to 11 and starts burning Olivia's eye, hand, and face. Despite an eye surgery laser never being able to burn like that due to hardware limitations in the power supply. But also, how many lasers do you know of to be capable of burning on contact like the film just shown outside of a sci-fi film? Not many. Barely a handful, if that. But despite the film's use of foreshadowing earlier, the laser to Olivia's face isn't what actually kills her. No, it's her somehow superhuman ability to fall through a tempered glass window, just as Molly and Sam arrive to see it. Oh, and her eye falls out, proving these films know squat about biology and just want to use shitty gore whenever they can. Also, what happened to the big burn she got on that eye? Didn't think to include that, filmmakers. Wow, even their half-arsed gore effects are done half-arsed. While Sam and Molly pointlessly console each other, the investigator appears once again, who clearly couldn't give a shit about Costanza either, as he didn't bother to show up there. But yeah, the investigator goes through the whole thing of being very suspicious without any capacity to believe the supernatural theory that Sam gives him. Which, after this many deaths, even Mulder and Scully in the first film began to believe Alex and his stories. So it's just stringing the investigator along the plot without giving him any kind of character development. Then comes the traditional working out the order of death scene, which we're familiar with, but the film can't get enough of its death scenes, so we need to see them again, putting a pretty accurate timestamp of 60 minutes for how long the filmmakers think your attention span goes for. Moving on, it's time to put Bloodworth's advice into practice, as one of the others, Nathan, continues to work, getting abuse from his colleagues, whom he has a chat with, below a hook and above some spikes. So it's good to know he's paying attention to the film's events. And yeah, the inevitable happens. The hook falls, knocks the platform through, and the worker gets a hook through the head instead of Nathan. And that's another thing. I'm not sure how the universe in the film determines whether or not one person killed another. Because it's not like Nathan caused the hook to drop. Yes, he called the guy up there, but if the guy wasn't such a dick in the first place, he wouldn't have done that. So how far does it go? It's all a bit ambiguous, which is what tends to happen when you make up ill-thought-out rules at the last minute. Peter is called into the boss's office, making sure to sound like a complete psychopath, telling him about how they're all gonna die soon, specifically saying it's kill or be killed, leading to another chat with the investigator, who's getting ever closer to relevance in this story. And back in the factory, Peter reckons that Nathan changed his own fate, making him even more determined to get to murdering. Oh, and the boss gets killed at that moment. Frankly, I wish they were all that quick so we can finish this shit as soon as possible. Back at home, there's another moment between Sam and Molly where she thinks he should actually do something to avert death coming for him, to which Sam responds with, meh. Nice to have a motivated protagonist. Also, I love the fact that the series has completely abandoned the idea of trying to save people and change the pattern and all that crap. Because let's be honest, the newer and stupider way they've done it for this film means there's far more death scenes and gore to distract people from the lack of a decent script. So Sam proceeds to work in the kitchen as the music gets all ominous, and everything under the roof looks like it's gonna pounce on the guy and maul him to death. Which, if you know anything about this series, and it's the 5th installment, you really should, Sam is the last to be killed. So all this ominous music and tension is completely wasted because we know he's perfectly safe. But hey, at least Sam accepts the job in Paris, giving him, and everyone else for that matter, just under 50 minutes left to live. I hope you don't mind me counting down these characters' inevitable deaths. I just want everyone to understand exactly how pointless it all is. Because as I've said many times, if you kill off all your characters, nothing is learned, no one develops, it's a completely blank slate. And unless it's under very specific circumstances, it's an incredibly lazy form of writing, since the writers have no reason to resolve anything. It just stops the plot dead in its tracks, no pun intended, and move on. It's just another reason to not bother with this film because it's wasting your time. Later that evening, a candlelit dinner is organised between Molly and Sam, telling her about the Paris job. And seemingly to spoil the mood, the resident psychopath arrives to join the romantic meal. Peter is aware, unlike the filmmakers apparently, that he's next in line to die, and tells the others about how he was tempted to push a random woman into a truck but couldn't do it. So instead of some random person, he's going to attempt to kill Molly, pointing a gun at her, leading into a chase into the kitchens, and the investigator is quick to join in because he's desperate for some relevance. Peter threatens Sam with the gun, shooting and hitting the fire suppression system. That's another aspect of this franchise that's never represented correctly, because those gas-based fire extinguishers would be completely useless against the kind of fires you'd find in a kitchen. They're more for electrical fires. But also, that type of gas extinguisher works by displacing the oxygen in a room, so all three of them should start to suffocate to death right about now. Peter then, for some reason, turns on all the cookers, not setting up any kind of explosion or fire, just turns them on. No idea. And then, while searching for Molly, the investigator appears, who is then shot by Peter, so he got his life. And now, doesn't need to be an antagonist anymore, right? Nope, one death ain't enough, as he needs to get rid of witnesses too, leading to more chasing. Sam fights with Peter as the gun is thrown on the cooker, and when Molly comes back to help him, Sam is given the chance to kill Peter and presumably get his life. So everything is fine now, right? With the gun going off and missing them both, they take that as confirmation. Ha ha ha. Fuck you. That's what the movie's saying, because none of it matters. Every remaining person has about 4 minutes left to live. So, either what just occurred gave Sam a measly 2 weeks, as it says in the next scene, or it didn't do anything. But the simple fact that he will die means it's still completely pointless. It's so pointless, in fact, I'm not going to insult your intelligence or waste your time. Ready? Here we go. Molly and Sam take the plane to Paris, but oh no, because it wasn't completely fucking obvious, it's the same one as the first film, as we see Alex and the others get carted off, just like in the original. So the aircraft takes off, both Molly and Sam die horrifically because fuck you, and then Nathan gets smashed by the wheel from the plane because fuck you again. No vaguely passable as a happy ending here. The end. There, Final Destination 5. What a fucking hateful series that got worse and worse. But having said that, Final Destination 5 is definitely not the worst in the series, but that's still a really low bar. This film is still awful and completely pointless. And no, it doesn't grab what the first movie had at all, because the first movie was unique. This is still the same formula repeated again, with the added antagonist subplot that serves neither rhyme nor reason. I think I've used every word under the sun to describe the Final Destination movies, so I'm going to have to resort to using a made-up word. Shitifying. And the best thing I can say about this film is that there are no more fucking sequels after it. Now that that's out of the way, for our next movie review, we'll be looking at not just a good horror movie, but what I would consider an all-time classic horror movie, courtesy of John Carpenter. So until then, see you next time.